Look at this. It's a standard disability insurance policy. It says if you lose your right arm at work, you're entitled to a certain amount of compensation. Your left leg, a different amount. Your right eye, left index finger, it's all here, quantified, predetermined. Boring, right? Corporate. The kind of document designed by actuaries in fluorescent lit offices. Except this system, the entire concept of disability insurance, wasn't invented in these offices by insurance companies. It was invented by pirates. Not as a side effect, not accidentally. Pirates in the 1600s invented what might be the first instance of inclusive disability insurance, and it was decades before the civilized world caught up. So let's set the scene. It's the golden age of piracy, 1650 to roughly 1720. European empires are moving unprecedented amounts of wealth across the Atlantic, from gold in the Americas, spices in the East Indies, the first era of true global capitalism. And pirates? They're not the Hollywood version. They were not in it for adventure. This is a business, albeit an incredibly dangerous business. Naval battles, storms, disease. If you worked on a ship long enough, something was going to happen to you. Now, if you worked for the Royal Navy or a merchant vessel and you lost your leg in combat, you got nothing. There was no pension set up, no compensation. You'd be dropped at the next port and you were left to beg. The empires moving all this wealth across the world's oceans had no system in place for looking after the sick and injured. This obviously created a problem for the pirates, where the risk was even greater. How do you recruit crew when the job involves near certain injury or death coming up against these empires? Before a ship left port, the crew would draft something called the Articles of Agreement. These were contracts. Everyone signed them, from the captain to the newest sailor. This was binding. This was as good as a law could be on a pirate ship. And buried in these articles, alongside rules about gambling and conduct, were compensation schedules. They would quote direct payouts for each limb or ability lost. Your right arm was worth more than your left. This was to account for the fact most people were right-handed, so your dominant arm was more valuable. It's actuarial thinking. This is risk quantification. And the key part was that the compensation for these injured pirates came from the common stock before any of the loot was divided. Think about what that means. The crew had agreed that protecting the injured members was more important than individual profit. So the collective bore the cost of individual risk. How did this work in practice? Say you're on Blackbeard's crew. You board a merchant vessel. During the fight, you lose your right leg. Under the articles, you're immediately entitled to roughly 2 years' wage for a skilled worker. This money doesn't come from Blackbeard's share, it comes from the common treasury before any division amongst the crew. It's already accounted for, there's no negotiation, the contract has already been signed, you are paid first. And if there's not enough money in the treasury, it comes from the next prize. The debt is recorded and you will be paid. Now, of course, this doesn't seem like classic pirate behavior. If someone gets injured, screw them. They don't deserve any money. But here's the thing. Every single crew member had signed that contract. So if all of a sudden injured members aren't getting paid, then they're going to start questioning the captain and revolt. Your injury today is their injury tomorrow. They want to know they're protected, and if they're not being protected, then there's a problem. Now, this was all happening in the dark underbelly of the pirate world, but what was happening in the legitimate world? Lloyd's Coffee House in London, which would later become known as Lloyd's of London, started offering marine insurance in 1686. But that was insurance for ships and cargo, not for people. The British Royal Navy didn't establish the Chatham Crest, a basic pension fund for disabled sailors, until 1693. And even then, the coverage was limited and payments irregular. Merchant sailors, nothing. Zero protection. Workers' compensation as a legal concept wouldn't exist in Britain until 1897. In the United States, 1908. So let's be clear about this timeline. Pirates had comprehensive disability insurance by the 1680s. The Royal Navy had limited pensions by 1693, and regular workers wouldn't get legal protection for nearly 200 more years. The criminals were literally centuries ahead of the empires. So why did pirates figure this out first? There was nothing particularly special about the people that were sailing on these ships. But ultimately, it came down to structure. Pirate ships operated as a democracy. Captains were elected, major decisions were voted on, everyone had a voice because everyone had skin in the game. There were no shareholders extracting profits, no distant owners. The people taking the risk were the people making the rules. This meant the insurance system had to be fair. If it wasn't, the crew could vote you out or literally throw you overboard. Compare this to a merchant vessel or naval ship, hierarchical, authoritarian, profits flowing to people who never went to sea. Those owners had no incentive to protect the workers. Workers were, in their mind, replaceable. But on a pirate ship, every crew member was valuable. Losing experienced fighters hurt everyone's bottom line. Insurance wasn't a charity, it was more of a competitive advantage. You could recruit better people by offering better terms, and in a world where able seamen had options, that mattered. Modern disability insurance has many of the same frameworks pirates invented. Predetermined compensation schedules, different body parts assigned different values, pooled risk across a group, payouts that happen regardless of fault. The principle is identical. Workers' compensation systems worldwide follow this model. The actuarial tables that insurance companies use to price risk use the same logic. But I guess there's a deeper point here. We think of financial innovation as coming from institutions, from regulators, from the center of power. But often the most important innovations come from the margins, from people facing real problems who need real solutions. Pirates understood the risk intimately. Every decision could be fatal, so they built a system that actually worked. Meanwhile, the empires, with all their resources, all their sophistication, left their people to be injured and sick and die in poverty. So next time you see your insurance policy, remember this. The people that created it weren't in boardrooms, they were on ships, operating as outlaws, outside the law. And they created something so effective, so rational, that 3 centuries later, here we are, still using the exact same thing. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. I post content just like this, right here, every second week.